Alaska.
Mr. President, I follow my friend and colleague from North Dakota, who has been a real leader here in these chambers, trying to educate not only those in these chambers, but really across the country, the value, the importance of the Keystone XL pipeline and what it means to this country, not only in terms of a resource that we need, but also in terms of jobs, not only construction jobs, but what it means to fill up a pipeline and provide for a product that goes down to our refineries. Again, when we're talking about an economic boom here, where better to look than to our neighbors to the north, and I thank Senator Hoeven for his leadership on this. I, too, want to talk about our opportunity as a nation to do more when it comes to increasing supply within our own country. As has been mentioned on this floor numerous times today, numerous times yesterday, we are in a position as a nation to be doing more to access our own resources, to make us less dependent on countries that don't like us, to make us more energy secure, less energy vulnerable, and at a time when the geopolitical scene is so shaky, every step that we can take to make us more secure from a national security perspective and an energy security perspective is clearly important. So I have a substitute amendment that I have filed that I think is important to this debate. I think it is important when we're talking about our access to supply. What I'm going to discuss here in my 10 minutes is not new. Members here have heard me talk over and over again about the prolific oil resources that reside in Alaska. According to the Energy Department, we've got over 40 billion barrels of oil that could be produced up north, providing not only the energy, but the energy security, the jobs, new revenues. We've got a pipeline that is built already. We don't need to deal with the permitting issues there. It's just waiting to carry oil. And we've got overwhelming support from Alaskans on this. But what we don't have is what is perhaps most important, and that's permission from the federal government to actually develop our huge oil fields. And the biggest on the continent is in the northwest corner of ANWR. For years, we have sought to develop a total of 2,000 acres in what is known as the 1002 area, for which Congress set aside back in 1980 to access for energy exploration. They knew back then that this area had great potential. The 1002 area is projected to contain more than 10 billion barrels of oil. If you were to put it in context this way, 1 million barrels a day coming down that pipeline, coming to us from ANWR, that's enough, Mr. President, to replace Venezuela or Saudi imports for about 30 years. About 30 years. To think that we could get off of Venezuela, that we wouldn't need to go to Saudi Arabia, tin cup in hand, because we're producing it ourselves here. Think about what that means to us. And for those who bring about the speculation argument and what that does to prices, just think how this would mess the speculators up if you add 1 million barrels a day online. But instead of us as a country embracing this as an opportunity, every excuse in the book has been thrown at us against development. We hear that the environment is going to be degraded, that wildlife will be disturbed, that despite a better environmental record than just about anywhere else in the world at Prudhoe Bay, we just can't do it. They don't trust us to do it. But for 20 years, we've been hearing now, well, don't go towards ANWR, don't develop ANWR, because, you know, it's going to take you 10 years to get that online. And so, therefore, it's not even worth considering. Even the late-night TV shows, Jay Leno jokes about that now, and he says, Democrats said it would take 10 years, 10 years ago. Well, Mr. President, if you don't get started, it's never going to happen. We're going to keep that money in the ground indefinitely if we don't get moving on it. So I don't accept the arguments that have been tossed out, but they haven't accepted the facts that we have presented. So I've got an amendment that's changed just a little bit here. It's designed to really address this debate. It would prohibit surface development entirely And yet it still allows for a very substantial portion of the oil to be accessed from our state lands with drills reaching beneath the coastal plain. And we do this by allowing only subsurface occupancy. We use extended horizontal drilling production. Right now it can reach about 8 miles underground in all directions, and as the technology continues to advance, more and more of that refuge's oil could be tapped. And again, Mr. President, we're not going to be occupying the surface. This is no surface occupancy, is this legislation. All the land-based structures would be located on adjacent state lands. You wouldn't see permanent roads, wells, buildings, pipelines. Wouldn't even be constructed on the surface of the refuge. If you were to put together a slideshow of development, the surface would be unchanged before, during, and after production. So this is ANWR. This is probably in the spring because you've got tufts of grass that are coming up through the melting snow. But this is pretty much what it would look like before, during, and after, because we are underneath through the technology. So the amendment that I'm offering gives us here in the Senate a chance to put reason ahead of rhetoric, policy above politics when it comes to oil production in the state. It's a chance to end this decades-old dispute about whether or not development can proceed safely. We haven't just met the opposition halfway here on ANWR. We've met them 90% of the way. We've written into the amendment more stringent environmental safeguards than on any other federal lands. We've sacrificed 90% of the revenues which Alaska is entitled to under our statehood agreement. We've proposed a 50-50 federal split, and now it just seems we're begging to access a small fraction of the reserves from miles away. It defies logic, Mr. President, to think that, again, an idea, a concept like this would be kept off the table. I realize that many are dug in on this issue, so I have attempted to change the debate, change the conversation. I would ask the Senate to take a moment to consider how far we have really compromised on this amendment, to understand why it is different, and I would hope that we can get a vote on it. Mr. President, I would ask at this time, as a point of parliamentary inquiry, when the Senate resumes consideration of the pending energy tax bill, would it be in order for me to offer my amendment, which is amendment number 1976, at that time?
If the pending question was S-2204, it would take unanimous consent to offer an amendment to that measure because there is not an available amendment slot at this time.
So the President is telling me that all of the available amendment slots have been filled by the Majority Leader?
That is correct.
I thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I have another issue that I would like to bring up today in the balance of my time. I've got two other amendments that I would like the body to consider. I understand what you have just said, but one of the things that I think we recognize is that much of our country's production can lag due to accumulation of red tape, due to permitting issues. We know that the federal government can't necessarily set global commodity prices, but it can create a situation where capital that might be invested in American mineral production is stranded for long periods of time, and that's exactly what we see happening. I think it's unacceptable. So what we shouldn't do then is, and particularly in the case of energy and minerals development, is to subject projects to an unnecessarily long permitting process. I have an amendment that would begin to remedy this situation, and it would do so by using the very language that the President used last week with his executive order he signed on March 22nd. My amendment incorporates provisions that have attracted pretty broad bipartisan support on the past highway bill that was considered by this body. These provisions are ones that will work. According to a September 2010 report by the Federal Highway Administration, these reforms have cut the time required to complete environmental reviews in half. They've mitigated the delays caused by last-minute legal challenges. What they do more specifically is take the President's executive order and put some some teeth to them, if you will. The President just simply asked the agencies to consider making certain improvements, but what I have done through my legislation is ask for a process for states to nominate items that might be subject to NEPA, allows for a shortening of review periods, designation of a single lead federal agency, but it is a situation that I do think rests on a good premise. The President has suggested that that this is an approach that needs to be considered when again they're making such improvements. I would suggest that if it's good enough for the President, good enough for our transportation needs, as we've seen demonstrated in the highway bill, that it's good enough for our energy, mineral, and infrastructure needs as well. So, Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent to call up amendment number 1985, which includes all of the provisions that I have described.
Is there an objection?
Mr. President.
The Senator from Illinois.
Reserving the right to object, my friend and colleague, the Senator from Alaska, I would just say that we have a bill before us relative to the subsidies, tax subsidies being given to the major oil companies, $4 billion a year to companies which registered $137 billion in profit last year. It is such a popular measure that moving to it attracted a 92-4 vote in the Senate, and we are trying to bring that to closure and get a vote on it. I know the Senator has an amendment she feels is valuable. I don't know the merits of it. I'm sorry I wasn't on the floor to hear the entire explanation. But we have just gone through a transportation bill where, after more than a week on the federal transportation bill, we entertained an amendment from your side on contraception. And so we'd like to, if we can, limit amendments to relevant issues and limit them in number and try to actually pass a bill in the United States Senate. It'd be almost historic. And I hope that we can do that in a bipartisan way, and I invite the Senator from Alaska to join us in conversation about that. But until we can reach an agreement on that, I'm afraid I'm going to have to object.
Objection is heard.
Well, Mr. President, I do think it's unfortunate that we won't have an opportunity. I know that several of my colleagues will be coming down, have already come down to offer up their amendments. We've been told that the tree has been filled. The amendment that I am proposing, I actually have two. One is I have described as probably broader in scope, but I actually have a second amendment that literally takes the President's executive order and provides for provides instructions to the agencies to do a rulemaking to implement them within 1 year. This is not something that the Senator from Alaska has designed. This is the President's executive order, but I think it is designed to get us to an expedited permitting process so that we don't have the lag times that we see, whether it's on transportation infrastructure or whether it is on energy issues. I think it is a good measure, and I would ask my colleague from Illinois, in the effort to be working together, which I appreciate, to take a look at this amendment. I apparently will not be able to introduce or to call up Amendment 1986, but again, what that legislation or what that bill would do is pretty simple, is just to codify portions of the President's recent executive order. It's entitled Improving Performance of Federal Permitting. He has suggested it. I thought it made sense, and now we're urging the agencies to provide for an implementation. Again, I do think that this debate that we are having on is an important debate. We're focused on the issues that people in this country are talking about. Folks back home are very concerned. I just met with a group of students, one young man, high schooler from Yakutat, probably driving his first car, and they are paying in excess of $5.50 at the pump. When you're a 16, 17-year-old boy, that's pretty high. When you're a person our age, that's pretty high. What are we doing as a Congress to help address these issues? So I can't overstate my disappointment that as we're dealing with these very difficult issues in what we all know to be a great deliberative body, that we can't move to a process where we could allow for fair and germane amendments that I think would help to address some of the energy challenges that we face, recognize where we are today. I see that my colleague from Louisiana has joined us on the floor, and my time has expired, so with that I will yield the floor and thank the President.